again. And you know what? Brett is here today. He is. I can see him standing right over there on the other side of the camera because he is busy pushing buttons. Since Aspen is not here today, well, she's here, but not here. She decided to go hang out with a couple friends, and they're taking some pictures and just having fun in general over at the lake, I guess.
Yep.
So here's Brett.
Here I am. I am just making sure we're actually getting
online.
And
I don't see us yet.
Not yet. So entertain the audience, and while I figure this out.
Oh no! Entertain the audience.
Yes.
I don't know if I know how.
Tell them.
Entertainment's not my business.
It's not.
No.
Tell them what's going on in our lives.
What's going on in our lives?
Yeah.
Well, got the car fixed.
We did. We had our car was.
Made some interesting knocks.
Yes, I haven't heard them since they got.
No, we should hope not, because they, as many times as they took it out, at least 4 times?
Yeah.
Because we took it in several times and said, hey, it's making this funny knocking noise. And they drive around all over the place and couldn't never heard it. They never heard the knocking sound. So, but they did take a look at the whole thing in general and decided what was wrong with something with the axles.
The boots on the axles were all worn out because it's an older car. So yeah, it was quite in need of that, because they're rubber. They're made out of rubber, and they're going to wear out after a while. And so they did. And yeah, we're a little off center, but I guess everybody can live with that.
I guess.
Yeah.
It'll
All right.
do.
Hopefully everything's working.
Yes.
But yeah, so looks like they're back now.
Looks like they're back now.
Aspen and her friends went to the lake, and they were going to do pictures and everything. And so what we planned was for them to come back right at the most inopportune moment.
That'll work out really well.
Really well. So far that plan is working just as though, we put it out there. And yeah, so that was good.
Yeah.
That worked, and it's Aspen, our good friend Hadassah, and this kid, Nathan. I don't know, he's like a little puppy dog, and everywhere he just follows behind them, and they just let him because, he's just kind of like that. But, that's kind of fun. Anyway, so yeah, $900 later, our car is now fixed, and hopefully it doesn't make any more knocking noises.
Yeah, it was pretty concerning at first.
Yeah.
But then they said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with your car, you can drive it. And so we said, okay, and we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So before we get into today's stuff and everything, I just wanted to take a second and let everybody know that I don't know that any of my high school friends actually ever watch this, which I kind of hope they don't. But, we all have people, in our lives, teachers and stuff that may have been really, influential in our lives. From Academy, one of my really good, ended up being a good friend later as I ended up student teaching at Pisgah. I went to Mount Pisgah Academy, and George Groh was the science teacher there, and he was one of those guys, a very rare breed. He graduated from college, and I remember him telling the story, he had his graduation, and then I think the next day he had his wedding. They went on their honeymoon that summer, and then he started teaching at Pisgah that next school year, and that's the only school he was ever at. He was there for, and I'm not sure how many years total he was there, but he never went to any other school, never did it. He taught at Pisgah his entire career, and he retired a few years ago, but then just a couple weeks ago he had a massive stroke and died, and there's a Facebook page going on, remembering Mr. Groh and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to acknowledge, yes, Mr. Groh was a powerful influence, and
I'd like to know who can, avoid the politics it requires to stay in one place for that long. That's very
yeah. He was the one of the few constants at Pisgah that you have teachers coming in. They had a couple that stayed there for a long time, but nobody like Mr. Grow. And, you know, the quick story, the one I shared on the Facebook page, as a junior in academy, back then, all juniors took chemistry. That was just the science you took. You took chemistry. And so we had Sunday was registration day. You go in, you sign up for your classes, and extracurricular and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going around and I'm just, you know, the schedule's pretty much done for you. You know, you get very little choice in what classes you're taking. And so I got to the science table and I started signing up for chemistry, and he wouldn't give me the pencil to sign up. And I said, I need to sign up for chemistry. He said, no, Brett, you're not taking chemistry. And I'm like, I'm a junior. All juniors take chemistry. Yeah, you're not taking chemistry. And I thought he was just, because we did this with teacher, I thought he was just like kidding around with me and everything. Yeah, okay, I need to get a chemistry. He said, no, Brett, you will fail. If you try to sign up for chemistry, you will not pass. And I'm like, wow, that's harsh, you know. He said, you'll be taking earth science. Because I went as a sophomore, I didn't go as a freshman. And back at my junior academy, I didn't take earth science, which was another science you could take at the time. And so he just refused to let me take chemistry, and I took earth science. And so the entire year, I'm a junior in a class full of freshmen taking earth science. I don't know that you could do that today, but in that time, it was a very, very wise move on his part, because he was right. I absolutely would have. I was a horrible student. I graduated, no lie, I graduated with the absolute lowest GPA you could get and still graduate in high school. I pulled the exact same feat off for college as well. And he was right, I wouldn't have passed. Ended up, I loved earth science. Oh my word, I loved earth science. It was so cool when we did the volcanoes and especially space and all that kind of. And so fast forward, I don't know, 15 years later, and I'm teaching in my very first school, and one of the classes I get is earth science. And so I told them, we go straight to the back of the book. We're going to start with space and everything. And I remember at one point, the kids were like, wow, you really like this stuff. And I was like, yeah, let me tell you why. And I told them the whole story, not being able to take chemistry. And so it was a very wise, and he did that because he wanted me to be successful. He knew I was not in a place in my life I could have passed a chemistry class. And just so you know, though, years later, I did take survey of chemistry and general chemistry, the hard one, and got A's in both. Just so you know.
Wow, go Brett.
Yeah, that was fun. My G-Chem teacher was the guy that invented Rolaids.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a fun, jovial little guy. But yeah, what happened was my mom and all, if you wanted to, you could make straight A's, like a lot of parents do. If you wanted to, really, you could make straight A's. I don't know what happened after my first time through college. I just, at one point, I thought, I wonder if that's true. I'll try. And I did. For the first time in my life, I tried. And all of a sudden, I made straight A's. I'm glad I didn't do it earlier, though, because I turned into one of those people that had to have an A. And if I had an 89.9, I was a failure. And I did not like my personality those 2 years. I went back to college for 2 years. I did not mind. I was too driven. But apparently I got over it, because here I am now, just like, I don't care, whatever. But anyway, so Mr. Grow, rest in peace. Miss you, and you were a powerful influence in my life.
Alrighty, so well, Brett's gonna kick us off on the Church of Ephesus this week.
I am?
Yes, because he's the guy who knows all.
Oh, am I doing what I did in Sabbath school?
Whatever you would like.
Oh, okay. So the church in Ephesus. I guess I have to tell them what's going on. In Sabbath school, we're studying. We told you this. We're studying Revelation, and they're going over, the whole book of Revelation, and it's going painstakingly slow. But that's the choice our Sabbath school class made. Mm-hmm. They want to do it verse by verse, mm-hmm. And they did the introduction. They finished the introduction today, barely, and. It kind of gets into a little bit of an issue because, like, Miranda was supposed to teach today, and it was on the 7 churches, the first 3 churches, but the guy from last week hadn't finished, and so he had to do the first. It ended up being 30 minutes, I think, because 50 minutes prayer, 50 minutes.
Right, because we didn't really start till 20 minutes till 11.
Right.
And Sabbath school starts at 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Yeah, we
No,
were
10. Sabbath school starts at 10,
Yeah.
but we didn't start teaching until 20 minutes till 11.
to 11, yeah. So kind of 30, 40 minutes in, and the introduction. But now when you get into the churches, this is where you start getting into the actual timeline and how the things in Revelation, match not just what was going on in John's day, but also, historical events. And so I was giving the overview. I was trying to prep them for what's about to come, which is, as we do this and you study Ephesus, and that's the one piece, you've got actually the 7 churches are, small pieces to a much bigger puzzle. So when you get into the 7 churches, the 7 trumpets, the 7 seals, you get into those things, what they are a breakdown of time periods between John's day and the second coming. And so the 7 churches give 7 different time blocks. It breaks that whole time of history up into 7, and they give you this big picture view of the 7 different time periods. And the 7 trumpets, 7 seals do the same thing, but they just give you more detail and then more detail. So it's kind of like a wide angle to a 50 to a zoom. And that's how the next, several things are going to go. And I was trying to say, so understand as you take your time and you spend 2 weeks on the first 3 churches, those are just little pieces of a much bigger puzzle. And be prepared, you're going to have to remember that. And when you get down to the 7th seal and how it fits to the very first, second, third one, church. And so I was just kind of giving an overview. And then the Ephesus is the first of the time periods. And that's pretty much John's day, 69, 79 AD to 100, 105 AD. And the things in the letters to the churches are both descriptive of what was going on at the time in the church, descriptive of what was going on in that time period of history, but also can be seen as a description of one of the phases that all churches go through, from their church planting to the initiation till, years down, and kind of the stuff they go through. And so in Ephesus, we have, one other thing, most all the churches have the same pattern. There's praise, admonition, and challenge and reward. So it's like, hey, I praise you for this, but this I have against you, and if you endure, you will receive, this. And that's kind of what they all go through. In Ephesus, it is praise for the works, the good deeds, praise for testing people who say they're prophets but are not, and praise for not tolerating the practice of the Nicolaitans. And
look at that. Look at you go, Brett. Just boom, boom, boom.
Well, they drill this stuff into you.
And me, I'm kind of like, now what was this one thing that he has against them? Oh, what was that again?
But see, and this is what I tried to do in Sabbath school. So I'm doing all this information, right? And it's interesting information, like the Nicolaitans, and then people read that and they go, oh, what's the Nicolaitans? That's got to be some mystic secret society. And it's interesting in the fact that the practice of the Nicolaitans, there's not a lot of biblical evidence for it. It's only mentioned a few times. Even extra biblical stuff, there's not a lot. There's theories, and one theory is this guy Nicholas, who was said to be a proselyte of Antioch. He's mentioned in Acts, and they think he may have been the leader of this group because he was deep in paganism, and then he, as a proselyte, he translated. He came over to Judaism, but then he also, after Judaism, he came over to Christianity. So he was someone who bounced around a little bit, obviously, and what they think is that he mixed Christianity with paganism and, kind of had this mix of, truth and error. And he was basically trying to make Christianity more appealing to the world around them, because there was practices that, they would be persecuted for, and he'd be like, oh, it's no big deal, just do this and get along with everybody. But it's also seen as part of Gnosticism, and Balaam from the Old Testament, was a compromiser in Israel, and that was his downfall. And we see it as that too, is compromising principle of Christianity with paganism and mixing the two, and that's kind of what, So my point in Sabbath school was, isn't this all interesting? Sure, it's interesting. And I think, and this is just my perspective, people get so wrapped up in that stuff they haven't heard of particularly, or it's fascinating, or yeah, sure, yeah, it is. But really, what's the important message of Ephesus and the seven churches? And then that's where Miranda comes in. So Miranda looks at this, and she looks at things more from a relationship. How does this, meaningful impact us? And that's what I was trying to get in Sabbath. Was like, yeah, I can talk all day about this stuff, guys, and you will know some things, but what real difference will it make?
Right. Is it going to change your life?
Exactly.
Yes. And people, they're like, oh, I got to understand Revelation so that I can withstand persecution and such like that. But knowing all those things that you just talked about is not going to help you withstand persecution.
No.
No, it's not. It's not going to help you reach your goal for that. But it's when you start looking at the things where Jesus said, well, this is a part that needs to change in your life.
Right. Because we all share experience and characteristics with the stuff Jesus is pointing out in Ephesus. It's not just her, it's us. And yeah, so that's where I thought, you guys need to listen to Miranda because she's talking about relationship stuff where we tend to get off on the information. But you asked some really good questions, I thought.
Okay, so basically, Jesus said the one thing he had against them was that they had left their first love of their relationship with him.
Right.
And he wanted them to get it back.
Yeah.
So we asked, well, if Jesus had come to your church or had sent a message to your church, like this very church, and it got read in your church and it said, you know what, you guys, what you need to do is get your first love back, what would you do?
Right. Which I thought, that's kind of how you're supposed to read it. We're done, well, they read to the church in Ephesus and da-da-da. And then, it's like, I said, put yourself in their place. What if you're sitting there and they're reading letters? Well, here's a letter from John, and he says, Jesus told us that we have lost our first love. That's impactful. What do you do about that?
Yeah, what do you do about that, right? Yeah. So basically, Ephesians 1:15, so that in the early days of the church of Ephesus, it was known for its faith in the Lord Jesus and their love for all the saints. And so they had love and they had faith in Jesus. And so the result of not having faith in Jesus and love for everyone was that their religion became legalistic and loveless.
Yeah.
And they were doing the right thing, but their works became cold and lacking in love for Christ and their fellow humans.
Yeah, and I think, like in one of the praises they had was that, you don't tolerate the Nicolaitans, you don't tolerate those who claim they're prophets and are not, you test the things. And it was brought in Sabbath school, but it's true. They may have been doing some of the same things they'd always done, but since they lost that motivation of love and the faith, now it became cold works. And it was like, we're going to root out error and we're going to stick to the truth, and getting to truth became more important than love.
Right. And Hebrews 12:2 says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. So basically, our faith relationship with Jesus is something that we can't get on our own. Because we did ask that, and some people are like, well, it's time spent with that person, it's like a marriage, and that sort of thing. And yes, to an extent, yes, but how?
Yeah.
And it's not just that. It's not something that you go out and get and necessarily do for yourself. We can't. Faith is a gift from God.
Right.
And he brings about experiences into our life that increases faith.
Yeah. And that's it's kind of like the balance, like, you hear, well, you need to, you need to spend time with God, you need this, you need to do that. And it's easy to get into your mind, even without meaning to, that if this, then that. If I do this, I will get this. If I do this. And it's not a transaction. Faith is, so you may put yourself in the place where it can happen. You may ask God to give you the experiences, but it's not, well, if I do this, then God has to do that because I performed my act.
Right, because we have no idea what God's plan is for us.
Yeah.
We don't. So I'm quite sure I've told this story here before, but just as an example about faith, or asking God for faith, basically. It was probably about 12 years ago, I think, by now, and it sure doesn't seem that long at all. But
what is this?
When I asked for faith.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah. So I was praying one morning. It was morning devotional time and such, and I prayed something for someone, and I've been praying it for almost a year and hadn't seen anything happen. So I was like, well, how do I know what God wants for that person's life? So I said, well, God, do you want me to keep praying this prayer for them? And I have no idea what I expected when I asked that in my head, but I heard that little voice run through my head that said, oh, ye of little faith. And it was as if I could just see Jesus sitting there, sort of like a slightly exasperated parent, like, oh, ye of little faith. How could this have happened, kind of, And so I wasn't about to take the blame for that. Just like a split second as you're going along in conversation, And so I said, well, if I don't have enough faith, that's because you are the author and the finisher of my faith. And so therefore, if I don't have enough, then you need to give that to me. Besides that, all I need is one mustard seed. That's what you say in the Bible. Only need one mustard seed worth of faith. And so I would like my mustard seed. And then I thought, well, I'm human. Better make that 2 mustard seeds. Because around here we tend to misplace things, don't we, Brett?
I just like it. I want my mustard seed.
Well, I know, but that's what I said at that point in time.
That's all. Whenever you tell us, that always strikes me funny. It's like, and I want my mustard seed.
I do want it.
Yeah.
So.
And then, well, you know what? I might lose the one. You better give me 2.
Yeah. And then I thought, well, you know what? I'll bet God has bushels full of mustard seeds sitting around in these barns in heaven.
Bags and bags of it.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure.
And so I thought, well, better give me a bushel.
Yep. Forget 2.
Better make it 2 bushels, because once again, I am human, right?
Yeah.
Might actually spill that one, and and they're very, very tiny seeds. Yes, very small seeds. And so then I thought, well, why bother with 2 bushels when I can just ask for the whole barn full? And so I did. So actually, like, nothing happened magically at that moment. It actually took several months. And then it was like these little things kind of started happening, fun things in a way. And eventually, of course, faith learning experiences aren't necessarily quite as fun, but you can still appreciate them for what they are, which is meant to draw you into a closer love relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, sort of a perspective on how things happen to you in life, and you take a look at it and like, why me? Why is it, or versus like, so what can I get out of this? What can I grow out of this? It makes a difference. It really does. Your attitude or your perspective on things really does make a difference on how we just get through a day or feel about and emotionally and stuff about experiences that happen to us.
Yeah, and so another one of the questions I asked in Sabbath school was, what then stops us from loving God? What stops that from happening and from living out that loving relationship with Him? And once again, we got the same kind of answers. Yeah. It was the same, well, you got to spend time with that person, and sure, sometimes a busyness in life and such like that, but the same answers we'd gotten before.
Because when you get busy, you tend to forget things, and you want things that you don't get. For instance, when I was setting up for this, I forgot to get a bottle of water that I was going to drink during the whole thing. And so, sometimes when you put out into the world your needs, someone will come along and they're like, that's a need I could fill. And they just take the love and opportunity to get that for you.
Yes,
and they make sure.
Look at Aspen go. I'll bet she's even going to open that for you. And there she is.
And there she is, going to drink it in front of me.
Well, I mean, she wouldn't want you to, that's always right there at the top.
You.
That water is.
Yes.
And you pick it up and it just squishes all over the place.
Squishes all over the place. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I'm thirsty too. I'm just kidding. What? She didn't even turn around to get me.
She didn't even turn around.
Just kidding. Yeah. So what stops us from loving God? And then I had someone read 1 John 2:15 to 17. And we may have talked about this in Salt before, but not super recently. And so anyways, 1 John 2:15 basically is what says what stops us from loving God. Do not love the world nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. The world is passing away with all its lusts, but the one who does the will of God continues to live for forever. So then, see, if I'm not loving God, then if not loving God is serving self, right? Then to love God would be to sacrifice self. And to live by faith in God is to believe that He can see the future and I cannot. When He says things like, do not lie, do not worry about tomorrow, for each day has enough of its own trouble, and such things like that, we need to believe that He can see into the future, right? And what will happen if I do this or if I do that, right? And so He is there giving us really good advice. And we don't have to like sit there necessarily and listen for His voice speak to us, because there is plenty of instructions in the Bible to keep us busy for a very, very, very long time.
I think we have a saying in recovery, it's like the only part of the future you need to know is what is the next right thing to do. And in recovery, we'll tell people, an addict, if sometimes the most simplest thing is you have to get up and tie your shoes. Do that, and then ask yourself, what's the next thing I need to do? And as you do the little things in front of you, over time, you look back and you can see where, God has led you through things, even though at the time, all it seemed like you were taking just barely one little step forward. And that's kind of what you're saying here, is that, there are things we always know is God's will. There's things we can always choose in the moment, just to forgive something or to love something or to, just the little things. And the part of the faith, I think, comes in and going that as I do those little things that I know are the right things to do, God is going to lead me one step by step into the future. And later, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, whatever, you'll be able to look back and go, oh, now I see, So it's hard to see that when you're in the middle of it. It's also hard to see it when you're young. I mean, when I was, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, whatever, these were things I knew in my head, and I thought, okay, I think they're true. But really, I hate it because I sound so old. But as you get older,
we're not old.
You look back and go, now I can see the path. I can see where, I was led here and there and why things happen the way they did. But it is only after, some time. Not a lot of time, but some time.
So basically, when I serve self, it's like I'm just chasing my tail around in a circle. And I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not getting to the place that God has created for me to go. When I do what God tells me to do, then He makes my path straight. And so if not loving God happens because we love the world and the things in the world more than God, which means we serve them and we serve self instead of God, so therefore living by faith happens when we sacrifice self. So basically, okay, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. Okay.
Can't now.
There's this
that
picture right here. I don't know how much you can see on the iPad. That it's just a mountain there next to the water, and it's got this curvy road that winds between the mountains. And so there's parts of that curvy road that you can't see, right? And yet if you're going from point A to point B, and the GPS says to follow this road to get there. Now, do we stop at the edge of a curve before we go around it because we don't know what's there? No, because we know that we must go around that curve and around the next one, that we can't see beyond it until we turn onto it, because it's going to get us to our ultimate destination. And so that's living by faith, right? Believing that the road, one, is there, two, it's going to get you there, and such. We don't just stop because we can't see that part of the road. And then, but would you stop if there was a stop sign? Okay, So what if the road is blocked off for construction? What if there was no construction workers and the road looked perfectly fine? Would you drive through the taped off section to get where you wanted to go faster? Okay, well, there was one day I was driving along and they had taken the 2-lane road in town down to 1 lane because they were doing some construction on the other side on that lane, and they had repaved.
This is in Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this.
They had repaved that section of the road. Well, apparently someone, they had it taped off. They had it taped off, and yet apparently someone got in a hurry and thought that they knew better than that taped off section was telling them, and they pulled off into what probably must have looked like dry cement to them. But it was not. It was still wet cement, and it just sank down in there. And I thought, oh, what a way to make your day worse, right? Because it wasn't already bad enough, clearly.
Yeah.
Because clearly he was in a hurry and frustrated about something. Otherwise, he would not have tried to take the shortcut like that. And like I said, what a way to make your day worse, right? So there he was, basically stuck and not going anywhere, like us chasing our tail in the circle. And so our wisdom often gets us nowhere. We have the choice between doing our own words and chasing our tail in circles, or we can live out the words of God because we believe that God is the only one who can see the future.
Yep.
Yep.
Made me think of a story, your whole road thing there. Okay, fine. Here I'm sitting there, I'll tell it.
Tell it, Brad.
So let's imagine that, the road winds around, and you can see some of it, and that's a part of the future you can see, but other around the corner you can't see, and that's where your faith. And we'll say that road is your path of life, and let's say that cars in front of you are other people and other things that you experience and interact with in life. And we'll say that big 18-wheeler trucks are all driven by the devil, and they are dangerous, right? And so sometimes they block your view. Sometimes you definitely don't want to have a head-on one-on-one with a big 18-wheeler. So I know I've told you this. My brother and I were driving home, and we were going through the mountains of North Carolina. And so I was on the road of life, and there were these cars and pickup trucks in front of me, and oh my gosh, they were so slow. And it was just really frustrating, I wasn't going as fast as I wanted to go. And so I'm sitting there, and we get to this part where the road curves way out on this kind of a bend, so you can see it, and then way down the end it curves around the mountain where you can't see it. And as soon as I came on that stretch and I looked at it, my brother probably knew what I was thinking, and he was like, don't, because there was 2 cars, a pickup truck, another car, and a semi in front of us. And I'm sitting there thinking, I could make that. And so the still small voice that we'll say was the Holy Spirit was telling me, don't do this. And God's wisdom was telling me that the people in front of me were an opportunity of character building, as you so described, and to have faith that it would be okay if I would just be patient. And but no patience here. So I geared down. It was about a stick shift, and I geared down, and off I took. And so I could see ahead, for the first 2 cars, and we were clear. And then the pickup truck kind of blocked my view for a little bit, and then I had 1 car in the semi, and as I came around the pickup truck and I could see clearly again in the view, there was another semi coming the other way. And at this point, some of the cars are honking like, this kid's gonna die. And I was going fast enough, and I was already so far ahead that I didn't believe I could brake and all the cars could get by me and I could get back over into my lane before this semi came on and hit me, because the semi couldn't see me. And once I passed that car, I couldn't see where he was at anymore because there was a semi that I was passing. So we couldn't see each other. And it was one of those split moment things. And this is the part where the Bible says, you know, but God will always provide for you a way out. And so just as I was coming around the corner, I saw to the left, there was this just little dirt pull off, right? But I'm doing like 70, 75. And, you know, this pull off was maybe 3 car lengths long. It wasn't very long. And so I slammed on the gas. I headed for it. And just as we were coming around the corner, I hit it. And the semi came back the other way. And you couldn't have put a piece of paper between us and him. It was that close. And as soon as I hit that dirt pull out, I jerked the wheel, pulled the emergency brake so that we would go sideways because there was no way we were going to stop in time head on. So split, we went sideways, we skidded, and I remember the tires just bumping up against the side of the mountain, just boom, you know, and we stopped. And then we were safe. And my brother was so mad at me. That was like, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me and he hit me. And then he got in the driver's seat, you know, we talked. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as we got around the part where I couldn't see, it turned into a 4-lane highway.
Oh, right, yeah. See, it's one of those things where God sees the future, and we haven't a clue. But, okay, so honestly, I listened, like I too have been tempted in my life, when I was younger, not now that I'm older, but to pass when you probably shouldn't. So when I lived in Alaska, we lived out of town, and so on the way to town was a place called Dead Man's Curve. And, you know, just the little narrow 2-lane road. I'm not sure there was really too much edge on each side. One went straight down to the ocean, the other was straight up the side of the mountain. And it had several curves in there that were pretty steep curves, you know. And so probably more when I was headed from town to home, there was this stretch that, no, there was that curve up there. But if I was behind someone that wasn't going quite as fast as I wanted them to, I would gauge whether or not I could make it past them before somebody might be coming around the other side.
See, you guys only see her here, right? I've seen her before she was the woman she has come to today with her patience and love for the world around her. There were times on the highway where she'd be driving and this woman came out of her that I'd never seen before. And someone would cut her off or anything, and she likes speed. She likes to go fast.
I do like to go fast. A fast car is fun to drive.
Yeah.
But anyways, so the thing is, so I would kind of hesitate there for a moment, and so sometimes I would choose to go, and sometimes I wouldn't. And I can't say it was a low voice, but there was something there, obviously, because I can guarantee you that every single time I decided to pass, there wasn't a car coming in sight. Every time I decided not to pass, around that corner would come a car or a truck. And I'd be like, whew, you know, glad I decided not to pass. So, yeah, we do need to listen to that little nudging and such that gets sent our direction when we're thinking of doing something not so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, there you go. Driving lessons
God knows
from
I
Brett
like to drive
Miranda.
fast. A little 5-speed? Yes.
Yes. It's too bad Aspen's sitting over there listening to these stories. Don't do what we did.
She doesn't want to drive. She wants to hire a driver.
Hire a driver. That's
Yes.
it. All right. Well, yeah, I guess that's it. So hope you had a good Sabbath, and we'll be here next time. I don't know what we're going to talk about, or we were going to go out today. It's kind of nice, but hopefully the weather will hold, and we'll go out next weekend somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see you next time. And of course, I can't stop anything because the iPad's over there. Oh.